Star Trek The Original Series, Season 1, Episode 29, Operation Annihilate. Welcome back, everybody. It's been a while since I covered an original series episode on the channel, so I figured I'm overdue for it. I don't know what made me pick this particular episode. I don't even think it's all that good, but it is pretty wacky. And some of the special effects are just delightful. It's also an episode that was partially filmed at an aerospace engineering campus called Space Park, located in California, which is kind of interesting. I mean, imagine engineering actual spaceships, and then one day Kirk and Spock just show up to work. Must have been a bit unusual. But the episode itself is unusual. I have more than a few notes, so we might as well just get into it. The episode opens up with the Enterprise en route to a planet called Deneva. There's been reports of mass insanity spreading throughout several planets in the area. And now, it has apparently reached Deneva. So, the Enterprise is being sent to investigate. And these cases of insanity apparently started a few hundred years ago. You know? I mean, that's a heck of a response time for Starfleet on this. Dr. McCoy has no theory on this, and get used to that. I love McCoy, but his head is really not in the game in this one. And the sensors detect a small one-man vessel heading towards Deneva's sun. They hail the ship, and all they hear is a man's voice saying, "They're gone. I'm finally free." They try to rescue him, but it's too late. He burns up from the sun's heat. They have no idea why this guy did this. For now, they just assume it must be one of the cases of mass insanity. It also turns out that Kirk's brother Sam and his family are stationed on the Deneva colony. But they also say that there's been no contact from Deneva for over a year, which is weird. Again, what kind of response time is this? Why did they take so long to investigate? I don't know. And does this mean that Kirk hasn't heard from his brother in over a year? I guess so. They arrive in orbit above the planet, and they're beaming down. The landing party consists of Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Scotty, a yeoman, and a red-shirt security officer. And I don't know who this yeoman is offhand, but she's very attractive, especially for a character that Kirk doesn't even seem to notice. And they beam down. The city it looks deserted, despite the fact that there's apparently 100,000 people living in the city alone. Spock says the tricorder scan says they're all still here, they're just hiding in buildings, which is convenient, because they definitely can't afford enough extras to make it seem like 100,000 people live here. They begin their approach, and they're accosted by a very angry group of guys wielding blunt objects. They're yelling at the landing party, but it seems like they're trying to protect them. Like they're yelling to them to just get out of here. It's not safe. We don't want to hurt you. And yet they're clearly threatening them. Spock points out that their attitude is inconsistent with their actions. They stun the potential attackers with phasers. Then they hear a woman screaming in a nearby building. They head there, and they find Kirk's sister-in-law, Erlan. I don't recall exactly how you pronounce her name, but it's unusual. And she's in a hysterical state. She keeps saying they're here. McCoy gives her a hypo spray, and it knocks her out. They also discover Kirk's brother, Sam, on the ground. He's dead. Tragic. And when they turn him over, it's just William Shatner with a mustache, which is pretty hilarious. So are they suggesting that Kirk is potentially a twin here? Who knows? The more likely explanation is that maybe they were just short on extras and the ones they had didn't look enough like Shatner to be a believable brother. Who knows? And Kirk is clearly a little bit shaken by this, but he keeps his composure. They also see Kirk's nephew, Peter, on the floor, unconscious, but alive. And Peter is a freckle-faced, redheaded kid. I mean, who is this kid's real father? Because Sam and his wife don't look like this. But I suppose maybe the kid's mother could be a redhead. Maybe she just dyed her hair. Who knows? It doesn't matter. I'm getting sidetracked, as usual. And Spock makes an attempt to console Kirk over the loss of his brother, but Kirk says he's all right. I know that Kirk is trying to keep things together, and he's trying not to be emotional, but he really doesn't have much of a reaction to his brother's death. And based on the time it's been since they heard from this planet, we have to assume that he hasn't spoken to his brother in a while. I'm guessing that just Kirk and his brother are just not all that close, which is certainly possible. And they're going to take Orilla and the kid to sickbay, and McCoy says he would like Kirk to be there when his sister-in-law regains consciousness. So Kirk, McCoy, and the two victims beam up. McCoy reports that both mother and son are in extreme pain. He says she seems to have a very high tolerance for pain, which is why she seems able to fight through it, at least to a point. She wakes up and she tries to explain what happened. She says they came here 8 months ago, these things. They were on a vessel from a planet called Ingram B. And when she answers Kirk's questions, it's as though the pain increases. She's fighting just to get the words out. She says they're controlling us, forcing us to build ships for them. And a few seconds later, she dies. Tragic. Kirk tells McCoy to look after his nephew while he rejoins the landing party. And when he does, Spock reports that they are hearing a strange buzzing sound. They head to investigate, and Kirk orders they set their phasers to kill. They head into the building, and they see, a bunch of raviolis that were heated up in the microwave too long. I have no idea. Either way, Kirk shoots one of them. It falls to the ground. Spock says they don't even register on his tricorder. And the yeoman says it doesn't even look real. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I've seen rubber dog shit at Spencer's Gifts that looks more real than this. And Kirk decides that they better leave this room. The others may attack them for shooting one of their own. And on their way out, the creature they shot starts flying around and attaches itself to Spock's back. And it causes him a great deal of pain. Kirk struggles to get it off of him, and he actually touches it with his hands to do so, which is probably inadvisable. But he manages to free Spock from its grasp, and Spock is clearly in a lot of pain. So they beam up. McCoy examines Spock, and what do you even tell McCoy in this situation? Because he wasn't there when this happened. So he's like, what the hell happened? And Kirk has to say, I don't know, man. He got bit by a flying calzone or some shit. I don't know. Just help him, will you? I mean, it's what do you even say? And after the exam, McCoy says he doesn't know if there's anything he can do for Spock or Kirk's nephew. He says there are puncture wounds on Spock's back, and he removed a piece of tissue that was wrapped around Spock's spinal cord. But it's already spread throughout his nervous system. He says it seems to take over the victim very rapidly. So Kirk wasn't in all that much danger just by touching it. It seems like the victim has to be, for lack of a less suggestive word, penetrated by this thing in order for the infection to spread. And after Spock attempts to take over the ship, they confine him to sickbay. McCoy says his pain levels are off the charts. Not exactly sure how they can measure the pain that he's feeling, because pain tolerance is different from person to person. So I don't know how that can be measured by a machine, but apparently Spock is in a lot of pain. That's the key point they're making here. McCoy goes on to say that no wonder they all go mad. They're in such pain. Spock is a little bit more lucid now, and he says the restraints will no longer be necessary. He says he's a Vulcan, and pain is a thing of the mind. It can be controlled. Kirk points out that Spock is only half Vulcan. What about the human half? And Spock says it is proving to be an inconvenience, which is kind of funny. But he tries to assure Kirk that he's got it under control. He says the parasites within him want to take over this ship, but he's resisting. Kirk says they could really use Spock's help, but they can't risk it, at least not now. If he can show that he can keep control, he may reconsider, but for now, Spock is ordered to remain in sickbay. And in private, McCoy tells Kirk that if his nephew regains consciousness, he'll suffer just like Spock. Kirk tells McCoy to help them. McCoy reminds Kirk that there's also 1 million colonists down on the planet, and they're Kirk's responsibility too. The burden of a starship captain is no joke sometimes. And once he's alone, Spock calls on his Vulcan strength to break free of his restraints. He puts on a uniform and heads to the transporter room. He tells Scotty that he's been ordered to beam down, but Scotty calls his bluff. He says the captain said no one was to beam down under any circumstances. He holds Spock at phaser point until Kirk and McCoy arrive. Spock once again tries to assure Kirk that he's okay, that the pain has subsided, which I think has to be a lie. He may be controlling the pain, but there's no way it's subsided. It's kind of funny how often Spock claims that Vulcans can't lie, and he lies all the time. I mean, he lies to himself. He denies his human half. And that's why Spock's character arc throughout the series and the movies is so great. For much of his screen time, he doesn't really know who he is, or at least he's in denial of who he is. He is often ashamed of his human half, and he declares himself to be a Vulcan, completely ignoring the 50% of him that is human, at least until he dies. And when he's resurrected, he seems to embrace the fact that he's not completely Vulcan and he's not completely human. He's unique. It's very subtle, but it's there. And I look forward to talking more about that as I continue with my videos on the remaining Star Trek movies. But for now, back to this episode. Spock uses pretty flawless logic to convince Kirk that he should beam down. He says they need to capture one of these creatures to study it. And since he's already infected, there's very little risk in sending him down there to accomplish this mission. Kirk still wonders whether Spock is able to complete this task physically, but eventually he agrees and he says that Spock's logic is inescapable. So he lets Spock beam down, but I'm not really sure why Spock felt the need to try to sneak down to the planet. I mean, even if he was successful, eventually they would have noticed he's gone and they may have beamed him up before his task was complete. Just seems like it made a lot more sense for him to make the case to the captain just as he did. Anyway, he arrives on the surface and he's immediately attacked by a guy wielding a giant pizza slicer or something. I don't know what the fuck this thing is. It looks like the key to the Fortress of Solitude or some shit. Anyway, Spock gives him the old Vulcan neck pinch, and the guy goes down, and then Spock feels a sudden rush of pain. He's obviously still struggling, and the creatures within him are causing him pain the more he struggles against them. So it seems like a hellish existence for Spock right now. And what is this red wall behind him? It feels like we're in the men's room of the Overlook Hotel right now. What the hell's going on? Anyway, he finds himself one of these Chef Boyardee-looking bastards, and he brings it back to the ship. They analyze it, and it's a one-celled creature. They seem to speculate that these things are basically parasites that exist on these massive organisms from another galaxy. They're basically implying that these things are kind of like head lice on Galactus or something. And they somehow migrated to this galaxy, where they, I guess, began infecting people here for the last few hundred years, and no one has done anything about it. And Kirk wants a report within the hour. He says maybe the colonist who flew into the sun wasn't just crazy. Maybe he was onto something. Maybe the sun did somehow free him from the infection before he burned up. And McCoy and Spock report back to Kirk within the hour, and they say they haven't found anything. They tried exposing the creature to intense heat, radiation. There doesn't seem to be any way to kill it, which in and of itself seems completely insane, but okay. And Kirk's options are now kind of limited. He can't let the infection spread beyond this planet, and if they can't find a cure for it, he may have to destroy the planet along with the 1 million colonists that reside on the surface, in order to keep it quarantined. But if he can't kill these things, I'm not sure how that quarantines it. I guess if they have nowhere way off the surface, they'll be stuck there, but I don't know. It seems very outlandish and fantastic, but that's par for the course with Star Trek. And Kirk says he won't destroy them, and he won't let them escape the planet. He simply demands that Spock and McCoy give him a third option. And once again, Spock and McCoy fail to deliver a solution. And Kirk begins to speculate. He says they tried heat and radiation, and he asks, what about light? The sun is bright, and those creatures on the planet were hiding in the shadows. Maybe they're sensitive to light. And if that's the key, then they can set up a string of satellites around the planet that will reflect the sun's rays back towards Deneva, thus bringing the equivalent of the sun's brightness to the planet. How exciting is this? But the thing that really annoys me about this scene is that Kirk is the one that figures it all out. The two scientists, they've been working on this thing for a while now, and they haven't figured this out. There's even a point where Spock lists the properties of a star, and he doesn't say anything about how bright it is. Kirk has to be the one to do that. It makes no sense. I love Kirk, but he should not have been the one that figures this out. They end up putting the creature under some kind of light simulator, and it simulates the sun's brightness, and the creature dies. It's a success. But in order to find out if this will cure someone who's been infected, they need to test it on Spock. They offer him some protective goggles, but he declines. He says there won't be any on the surface for the colonists, so he has to try it without it. He goes into this chamber. They increase the brightness to the level of a sun, and it works. Spock is cured, but he also can't see. The light has blinded him. Tragic. Spock says it was an equitable trade, but it's clearly not the victory that they all thought it might be. And to make matters worse, Nurse Chapel walks in and gives McCoy a report. It turns out that the total spectrum of light wasn't necessary. These creatures are also sensitive to light that isn't harmful to humans. Spock didn't need to be blinded. And if they had waited just literally 2 more minutes, they would have known this. Why they rushed into this, I have no idea. And they all should have thought about this possibility before blinding Spock. How McCoy or Spock didn't think of this, I'll never know. And they begin setting up these satellites, which will now reflect ultraviolet light, and they begin the process of decontamination. It seems to work. The creatures die, and the remaining colonists are cured. And a short time later, McCoy and Spock step onto the bridge. Spock has regained his sight. It turns out that the blindness was temporary. Spock explains that Vulcans have some sort of redundant inner eyelid, which probably protects them from the brightness of the Vulcan sun. And this is another key piece of information that I'm shocked no one thought of. It's almost like they made it up on the spot, which of course they did. But all seems to be well. Kirk, as usual, decides to go investigate Spock to see if he showed any emotion when he regained his sight. He says, for most, that would be an emotional experience. But I presume you felt nothing? And Spock says, on the contrary, I had a very strong reaction. My first sight was the face of Dr. McCoy standing over me. And McCoy hits back by saying, it's a pity that your brief blindness didn't increase your appreciation for beauty, Mr. Spock. The episode ends with McCoy mumbling to Kirk about how he should have known that Spock would turn up with something like an inner eyelid. And he also says to Kirk, don't tell Spock that I said he's the best first officer in the fleet, which is something he told Kirk earlier in the episode. And Spock hears this and says, thank you, Dr. McCoy. And Kirk says, you were so worried about his Vulcan eyes, you forgot about his Vulcan ears. And the episode ends with a bit of a laugh at the good doctor's expense. And it's weird because I think they do establish at some point that in Star Trek lore, Vulcans don't actually have superior hearing. But sometimes Spock does in the original series. I don't know. Overall, I think it's not a very good episode by any means. It does not make a lot of sense. Conceptually, I think it's okay because it's basically a monster or creature of the week episode. But it's very flawed in my opinion. I mean, I don't know anything about these creatures. We never find out anything about them. Are they intelligent at all? Did we just wipe out an entire species at the end of this episode? Who knows? We also have no idea if Kirk's nephew is okay. They somehow don't have a moment where he is revived. We never see this kid awake in the entire episode. And by the end of it, it just seems like Kirk and everyone else has just completely forgotten about this kid. It's really weird. And one of my biggest gripes with the episode is that Kirk is basically the one that solves everything. I mean, he doesn't actually do any of the science, but he's the one that points Spock and McCoy in the right direction on more than one occasion. And I just think that's not right. I mean, you know how much I love Captain Kirk. He is my favorite character, but having him come up with the solution to this just makes McCoy and Spock seem a little dumb. I mean, just the fact that they had to be told that one of the properties of a star is that it's bright is a little concerning. And the fact that neither McCoy or Spock thought that maybe they should test other spectrums of light first before exposing Spock to the full, unfiltered brightness of a sun. You know, it just makes them seem really out of character. And maybe you could chalk that up to Spock being in extreme pain and trying to suppress it, but what's McCoy's excuse? You know? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But it is a goofy episode, so I thought I would talk about it. I thought it might be fun, and it was, at least for me. I'm not sure it was fun for you listening to me talk about it. I'll let you be the judge of that. But that's about all I've got for now. Let me know what you think of Operation Annihilate, and until next time, take it easy.